Next example, the configuration management process. And here, for the first time during this webinar, we talk about optimization. On the left-hand side, you see the classic design of the configuration management process. There's a request, a system is created, a component is created, the system is configured, you install, replace, or move components, or you move systems along with organizational changes. Adding software asset management data, integrating SAM and ITSM would change this process design the following way. What you would do is the SAM functionality, the functionality of the Aspera tool would allow you to simulate the effect of your changes. So you do what-if scenarios, you simulate what happens. For example, you plan to change to a new type of virtualization. And before you do that, you would do the SAM tool, the mathematics, and find out whether this virtualization compared to the older virtualization is in line with the metric and the contract you have in place. Or if you would like to go from one cluster to another cluster and the new cluster has 5 times more cores than the previous cluster, the SAM tool will tell you beforehand how this affects your license demand. So by simulating before you execute the configuration, you can find out what is the cheapest version you could buy. You could check if the version you identified as the cheapest is in stock, and so that would be your cheapest available. And then, once you did that, the reporting will flow back into your SAM tool. The message here is, you do not only save time, you find the most cost-effective license available in stock, and you optimize existing systems. You can prevent yourself from expensive licensing environments, and you will ensure that the compliance follows the strategic assignment of licenses. My recommendation is don't configure or move systems without optimizing first. I've heard multiple stories where large organizations were proud about having restructured the data centers, and then they claimed, oh yeah, we saved 10 million, we saved 20 million by restructuring our data center. But no one ever considered the implications on the software side, so how this would affect the license demand. And then it finally turned out, yes, we saved 10 million in hardware, but we spent another 20 million for the software licenses we had to buy on top of what we already owned, because no one ever did optimization before changing the configuration. So this is probably the most beneficial piece of, or the biggest low-hanging fruit you can get from tightly integrating ITSM and software asset management, because it allows you to simulate your changes and to find out what is a good choice and what is a not so good choice before you execute. When you do ITSM without a specialized SAM tool like Aspera, this means that you cannot do automated stock checks, and most of the approvals will go straight to purchasing. From a certain organizational size onwards, it is literally impossible to do stock checks on the basis of Excel spreadsheets, because the number of requests coming in is just too high, and the complexity of the software requested is too high to do this manually. So that's a great advantage. Well, no SAM tool integrated in ITSM means you cannot consider the strategy. What I talked about optimization, this is not possible. You will lose licenses and the deployment process is not integrated, and when it comes to the compliance process, it is manual because, as we heard before, the ITSM tool does not understand product use rights and metrics. Maybe it can for 1 or 2 vendors, maybe for 10 or 20 products, but it cannot do the same for 150 vendors, for 50,000 products, and maybe 300,000 SKUs, as they are represented in the Aspera catalog. On the other side, if you have a SAM tool, but ITSM is not really integrated in this, well, then it's just count and compare. And you probably overlook the product use rights and the licensing rules, and any type of automation is far out of reach. And using the same process for all software, that refers back to the end-user-centric process I talked about in the beginning. This is a kind of trap that makes your life hard when it comes to all the other software that has nothing to do with an end user. But when you have all the ingredients, when you have the pan and the oven, and probably paid your electricity bill to fire up your oven, then you have a process that is tailored to the software and the corresponding licensing terms. You have that standardization because the service catalog and the SKU catalog are linked. You can do reharvesting, and compliance is no longer a time-consuming exercise. Compliance is a side effect that is more or less automatically guaranteed because you linked ITSM and software asset management. Every purchase, every contract, every license agreement you step into is based on previously executed optimization exercises. So you would never sign up for a contract where the tool didn't tell you beforehand, well, you should go right and not go left. You can go with a consumption-based contract model rather than an all-you-can-eat agreement. Unintentional under-licensing is almost impossible with this level of integration, and so is the high-cost configuration of systems when you do not simulate and if you do not perform what-if analysis. With software asset management and ITSM linked, you can forecast your demand and you reduce your future license demand based on that simulation. And last but not least, you create maximum transparency. So that was a quick introduction how ITSM and SAM can be linked together, what the benefits would be. And I would like to hand back to Dick because Dick has something to say here.
Thank you very much, Bernhard. Excellent job. I really enjoyed the presentation. Now would be a good time to submit questions. Remember, we left a few minutes for questions at the end, and while they're coming in, I do have a couple of questions, and I forgot to share the poll results too, so I'm going to hit a button, and you should be able to see the results of those polling questions that we asked you earlier. Anyway, I wanted to ask, when you were talking about the harvesting of licenses, we're a relatively small company. I think when we buy software, it comes on laptops for the most part. In other words, we buy desktops and laptops, and we order from a reseller, and it comes already. And then I suspect that what happens is if that particular laptop dies or if it just goes out of service for whatever reason, then we have to buy the software all over again. And I imagine that's pretty common, isn't it? Most companies, they don't track the software to the hardware well enough, so if they need a new piece of software, they just buy a new piece. They don't reharvest anything. Is that pretty common, Bernhard?
Yeah, the ability to reharvest your licenses is not widespread amongst larger organizations. As I explained before, in most organizations there is a disconnect between ITSM and software asset management. So if you don't know what you have in stock, if you don't know the product use right, you have no chance to automate, to define an automated reharvesting process. So let's say you're an organization with 100,000 clients, you're an international business, then it's likely that you see 2 requests per minute. There is no way to establish a manual process that could reharvest licenses based on 2 incoming requests per minute. And you also have to understand the product use right and the entitlement that refers to this software deployment or to the software installation, because maybe, as you said before, you bought a piece of hardware and there's software loaded on that. Maybe it's an OEM license, a true OEM license, and you wouldn't be allowed to reharvest that software. But when it was a separate license that was installed later, then you can probably reharvest that license. So again, no way without a SAM tool in the background to do reharvesting. And that's probably the reason why this is still a very underrepresented discipline.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a tremendous opportunity to save money. Let me also ask, I know these software license agreements can be pretty complex, and oftentimes companies are surprised. In other words, I hear the word true up all the time. So it sounds like a lot of times the software license agreements will allow these companies to add software licenses, and then they true up at the end of the year or whatever the period is, and then they send them a bill at the same time. And I've oftentimes heard that these bills can be kind of eye-opening because companies didn't really understand what they were doing until they get the bill. Does that happen very often in your experience?
Yes, it happens very often because for software vendors, the by far most attractive contract form is the so-called enterprise agreement, which is an all you can eat type of agreement. And you can benefit from this type of agreement when your business is in growth mode and when the economy is doing well, and when you're adding users, when you're adding computers, adding servers, and when you have larger migrations in front of you. But that's not always the case. So if the wind changes and economy is on a downturn and your business shrinks and you lay off people and you reduce the number of machines, then you're very often trapped in such agreements. And the way how they are invoiced, this refers to the true up. So you are contractually obliged to provide an annual reporting showing the number of users, and this is the number on which you're then this is the basis for your invoice. So enterprise agreements are in many cases do not work in advance of the company in many cases, and it's the most expensive way to license software. If you have a good SAM program, if you have a good SAM tool in place, it would be possible to get rid of some of the enterprise agreements and save significant amounts of money because you have better information, you can make informed decisions, and you only buy what you really need. And it's not an all you can eat game any longer.
Okay. Here's a question that just came in, and the question says here, what types of discovery tools does the SmartTrack integrate with? And I know we talked about SCCM, but what's out there? What's pretty common in an implementation?
Yeah, the Aspera tool integrates with almost any discovery tool because what we see with most implementations is that all our customers do not only have one discovery tool, they have multiple discovery tools in place. So our job is not to bring another discovery tool, but to leverage the existing technologies and to gather data from there.